The bridge of the flagship was filled with an eerie silence as the crew watched their human companion, Lieutenant Mark Evans, convulse on the floor. Captain, his face contorted in panic, turned to his medical officer. "Is it another system failure?" he barked. Dr. A lanky, with multiple eyes, scanned Mark with a handheld device, his antennae twitching with distress. "Do not understand, Captain. His internal temperatures are fluctuating wildly. His skin is secreting liquid. His mouth emits incoherent sounds." The crew gasped. It was happening again. Mark groaned, clutching his stomach as his entire body trembled. "Ugh, spicy, too spicy," he mumbled. Dr. recalled. "Spicy? What does this mean? Is it a disease? Is he overheating?" Mandibles clicked in frustration. "What did he ingest?" A junior officer hesitantly raised a trembling claw. "Sir, I saw him consume a Terran food labeled ghost pepper sauce before his system began to fail." A collective shudder ran through the crew. Mark writhed on the floor, his face turning an unnatural shade of red, his breathing coming in ragged gasps. He pounded his fists weakly against the cold metallic floor, his entire body radiating heat. His voice came in desperate, choked syllables. "Water. I need water." Dr. turned to the crew, his voice rising in urgency. "Hydration. Quickly. Before he combusts." One of the reptilian officers rushed forward, carrying a container filled with purified liquid. They were unfamiliar with the specifics of human hydration, but water was known to be a stabilizing element for many species. Without hesitation, the officer appended the entire container over Mark's head. The human gasped, sputtering as water drenched him, his soaked uniform clinging to his skin. His arms flailed wildly, and he let out a cry, his mouth open as if he had just surfaced from drowning. The crew recoiled in horror. His vocal output is distressed. "The water is not helping," Dr. cried. "Try submersion. He may require a full liquid immersion to regulate his internal system." Gave a sharp nod. "Get him to the medical chamber. Now." The two largest officers grabbed Mark under the arms and dragged him towards the emergency hydration unit. His feet skidded across the floor as he tried to resist, his exhausted limbs failing him. The medical chamber doors hissed open, revealing a large cylindrical tank filled with a thick, translucent gel. The crew wasted no time. With synchronized movements, they hurled Mark into the chamber, sealing it shut before he could react. Mark's body disappeared into the gel, his arms flailing uselessly as bubbles of air escaped from his mouth. His wide, panicked eyes locked onto the crew outside. The control panel beeped as the immersion system activated, designed to stabilize critical patients. Outside the chamber, the crew stared in grim anticipation. "How long should we keep him in?" one of the officers asked nervously. "Until his readings normalize," Dr. replied. "He must be stabilized before the malfunction progresses." Inside the chamber, Mark's struggles became more frantic. His hands pressed against the glass as his entire body jerked violently. The chamber shook as he kicked out in desperation. "Captain, his convulsions are increasing," a technician warned. Eyes darkened. "Pull him out. Now." The technician slammed the emergency override, causing the fluid to drain from the chamber. The door hissed open, and Mark stumbled out, collapsing onto the floor. He coughed violently, his face a mixture of rage and exhaustion. "What the hell was that?" he wheezed. Dr. stepped forward cautiously, his antennae twitching. "We were stabilizing you. Your biological systems were malfunctioning." Mark let out a short, bitter laugh before groaning in frustration. "I wasn't malfunctioning. I just ate something too spicy." The crew exchanged uncertain glances, their expressions a mixture of confusion and fear. Dr. hesitated before speaking. "You consumed a substance that caused internal overheating and involuntary body distress?" "Why?" Mark groaned, sitting up and rubbing his face. "Because it tastes good." The entire bridge fell into stunned silence. let out a slow, measured breath. You willingly ingested a harmful substance, for enjoyment. Mark nodded weakly. Yeah, pretty much. Dr. Eyes darted between Mark and the captain. Terrans are truly terrifying creatures. Mark stumbled to his feet, his face red and drenched in sweat. Water. I need water. He croaked. Dr. Jumped into action. Get him coolant. Perhaps submersion in liquid will stabilize his core. Before Mark could object, two large reptilian crew members grabbed him and dragged him toward the nearest emergency hydration station. The medical team quickly activated the purification chamber, filling it with sterile liquid. Without hesitation, they shoved Mark inside. Mark's eyes widened in horror as the cold fluid engulfed him. He flailed wildly, screaming, "No, not like this." The bridge crew watched in horror as the human thrashed violently. His limbs moved in erratic patterns, his mouth released a guttural screech, and bubbles of distress erupted from his submerged form. "Captain, his condition is worsening," Dr. yelled. "Get him out! Get him out!" Commanded. The crew yanked Mark from the tank, and he collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. He glared at them, eyes filled with betrayal. "What the hell was that?" he wheezed. Dr. wrung his hands. We were trying to stabilize you. You malfunctioned." Mark groaned, rubbing his temples. "I wasn't malfunctioning. I just ate something too spicy." The crew exchanged nervous glances. The human's biology was terrifyingly unpredictable. After the chaotic hydration debacle, the crew remained on high alert, watching Mark as if he were an unstable device set to explode at any moment. Despite his reassurances, their unease did not wane. Dr. continued scanning him every few minutes, taking notes in a desperate attempt to understand this baffling species. "Captain, his body temperature is still elevated, but his condition appears to be stabilizing." Mandibles clicked in frustration. Stabilizing from what? This human biology makes no sense. Mark let out a weary sigh. "I told you it was just a reaction to the spice. My body's fine now." Dr. squinted at his scanner. "Fine? And yet your system has undergone violent spasms, erratic temperature fluctuations, excessive fluid expulsion, and uncontrollable vocal distress. By our medical standards, that is anything but fine." Crossed his arms. "Human, you must understand. We take medical anomalies very seriously. If any other species exhibited such distress, they would be on the verge of system failure." "How do you explain this?" Mark shrugged. "I dunno. Humans just handle things differently, I guess." The crew's expressions ranged from disbelief to sheer dread. As they attempted to process this revelation, Mark's stomach let out a loud, ominous growl. The room fell silent. A few officers instinctively reached for their weapons. Dr. nearly dropped his scanner. "Captain, he's destabilizing again." Took a cautious step back. "Evans, what new malfunction is occurring now?" Mark blinked, then chuckled. "Oh, that's just my stomach. I'm hungry." The crew exchanged horrified glances. Dr. whispered. "The human is now exhibiting internal growling. Captain, should we prepare containment protocols?" Mark sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I just need food, guys. Seriously. I need to eat." The medical team scrambled for solutions. Nutrient infusion, plasma supplement, protein synthesis injections. Snapped. "No. We will not inject him until we understand his biology." Mark held up his hands. "Just give me regular food. Something not spicy." The crew hesitated. Then one of the officers retrieved a rations pack from storage. Mark took a cautious bite, chewing slowly as the crew watched with bated breath. A tense silence filled the room. Mark swallowed and gave a "Crisis averted, guys." Dr. nearly collapsed from relief. The crew, however, remained deeply unsettled. If this was how fragile humans were, how could they possibly survive? After an eventful day of witnessing the humans' biological and culinary horrors, the crew remained on edge. Mark, now fully recovered, was simply lounging in the command chair, sipping what he claimed was a carbonated beverage. The bridge crew exchanged wary glances, their fear of another malfunction. Then Mark had an idea. "All right, you guys need to relax. Let me show you something cool," he said, pulling a small, rectangular package from his pocket. The crew tensed. "It's food. Not dangerous. Just watch," he assured them. He placed the package into a small, portable heating device. "You just put it in, press a button, and wait. Simple, right?" The aliens cautiously observed the device, its mechanisms foreign to them. Moments later, a sharp pop echoed through the bridge. Panic ensued. A loud alarm blared as officers jumped to defensive positions. Weapons were drawn. Shields were raised. "It's detonating," a officer shrieked. "It's a Terran attack," another wailed. "Dove for cover, barking orders for containment." Mark, unfazed, casually leaned against the console. "Relax, guys. That's just the popcorn popping." More sounds followed, echoing like distant gunfire. The crew screamed, scrambling for safety. One officer tackled Dr. to the ground, shielding him from the explosion. Peeked over the edge of his control station. "Human, your food is unstable. Why would you activate such a device on my ship?" Mark stifled a laugh. "It's supposed to do that. It's just heating up and popping the kernels inside. It's harmless." Dr. hesitantly peeked from behind his overturned chair. This is normal." Mark picked up a handful of the freshly popped snack, tossing one into his mouth. "Yup. Want some?" He extended a small handful toward the nearest crew member, who recoiled in terror. "It still smokes. It is still emitting energy." Dr. screeched. "Of course it's hot. It just came out of the microwave." Mark responded, amused. Stepped forward cautiously, watching as Mark chewed the strange, steaming substance. His mandibles clicked in uncertainty. "You consume volatile materials willingly?" Mark smirked. "Technically, yeah. It's not volatile though. Just tasty." The captain narrowed his eyes, motioning toward Dr., who reluctantly took out his scanner and analyzed the strange food. "No toxins detected. No biohazards present. It is composed primarily of carbohydrates and salt." He hesitated, antennae twitching. "Captain, it appears safe." The crew remained skeptical, watching Mark casually munch on the popcorn. "Look, if it makes you feel better, I'll eat all of it myself," he said, stuffing another handful into his mouth. Exhaled deeply. Terran food customs remain utterly incomprehensible to us. First, the biological suffering from spicy sustenance, and now food that explodes. Mark chuckled, finishing his popcorn. "You guys really need to get out more. Terran food is some of the best in the universe." Dr., still eyeing the empty bag suspiciously, sighed. "I do not believe we are prepared for the full scope of human dietary practices. Your species is confounding." Mark shrugged. "Hey, at least you know I'm not malfunctioning this time." A long silence fell over the bridge. Looked around at his officers, all still tense, waiting for the next possible catastrophe. Finally, he sighed. "Bridge crew, stand down. This human madness is apparently normal." The crew hesitantly resumed their duties, though the paranoia remained. Mark leaned back, smirking. "You guys are so dramatic." As he took another sip of his drink, his stomach let out a low, ominous growl. The bridge crew froze. Mandibles twitched. "That was not an explosion, was it?" Mark grinned. "No. Just means I could use a snack." Dr. buried his face in his hands. "Terrans are exhausting." The crew had finally begun to accept that human physiology was simply beyond their comprehension. However, their sense of uneasy acceptance was once again shattered when Mark introduced yet another anomaly into their structured world. It started when noticed the human behaving strangely. Mark was unusually still, his gaze fixed on eyes and focused, mouth slightly open. He emitted a series of short, sharp noises, gasps interspersed with wheezing sounds. The bridge crew glanced at each other in alarm. "Captain," Dr. whispered. I believe he is seizing again. Snap to attention, mandibles clicking. Human. Are you in distress? Mark waved a hand absently, still making the strange noises. No, I'm fine. Just this is hilarious. The crew remained tense. Clarify, ordained. Mark, still barely holding back his convulsions, turned towards them. It's a joke. Something funny. The crew cautiously approached, scanning the screen. A short statement, followed by an absurdly exaggerated image, appeared. It was completely nonsensical, yet Mark seemed on the verge of complete system failure. His body shook, and he let out another strangled noise. I can't, it's too stupid. Dr. gasped. Captain, he is destabilizing. His breathing is erratic. His muscles are locking up. Recalled. Human. Stop whatever reaction this is at once. Mark wiped his eyes, still wheezing. Guys, calm down. I'm just laughing. The crew exchanged horrified looks. Dr. consulted his notes. Laughing? This is a non-Terran response, is it not? But the readings are severe. Increased heart rate, erratic muscle spasms, tear production. This is clear biological distress. Frowned. You claim this reaction is voluntary. Mark nodded, trying to stifle another chuckle. Yeah, it's just a thing humans do when something's funny. It's harmless. The crew remained skeptical. And what exactly is funny? Asked, wary of yet another incomprehensible human quirk. Mark grinned. It's hard to explain. It's when something is unexpected, or ridiculous, or just plain stupid. Like, look at this meme. He swiped to another image. The bridge officers flinched as another round of strangled noises erupted from Mark. This this is comedy gold. The crew peered at the image with expressions of absolute confusion. Dr. cautiously analyzed the content. This does not contain any logical progression. It lacks coherence. Yet it causes your system to react violently. Mark nodded. Exactly. That's what makes it funny. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. Finally, muttered, humans are the most baffling creatures in existence. Dr. sighed, lowering his scanner. Captain, I fear we may never fully understand their biology. Every aspect of their being is erratic and... Another short wheezing sound came from Mark, who had scrolled to another meme. Okay, but look at this van. The crew collectively groaned. Massaged his temples. Bridge crew, stand down. If this is simply another Terran malfunction we must accept, we will add it to the logs. But I swear, human, if this laughing leads to your demise, I will hold you personally responsible. Mark wiped away a tear of laughter and gave a noted, Captain. As he scrolled for another joke, the crew exchanged weary glances. Dr. muttered, I must update the medical records again. The crew slowly returned to their duties, but their paranoia remained. Terrans, they realized, were not just unpredictable. They were outright absurd. And the worst part? This was apparently normal. Let out a slow exhale and turned away. I need a strong drink.